Side Hustle Show 80, a $60,000 a year hands-off business.
Welcome to the Side Hustle Show, where aspiring part-time entrepreneurs learn how to turn their side hustle dreams into reality. Because your 9 to 5 may make you a living, but your 5 to 9 makes you alive. And now, your host, Nick Loper.
Hola, everybody, and welcome to the Side Hustle Show. This is episode 80, a $60,000 a year hands-off business. It's all about Airbnb. My guest is Jasper Ribbers, a Dutch travel blogger and micro real estate mogul who earns a full-time income renting out his Amsterdam apartment on Airbnb. And the best part is he's outsourced just about everything at this point, so a pretty cool operation. All my notes, highlights, and resources along with Jasper's top hosting tips are in a free downloadable PDF for you at sidehustlenation.com/80 or through the link in the episode description of your podcast player app. And this is an appropriate episode for this week because I'm actually recording this intro from our Airbnb apartment here in Madrid. It's a pretty sweet pad, 2-bedroom, central location, and very affordable, pretty baller place. We just checked in yesterday afternoon, but I'm a fan. So stick around to the end of the show to find out how to get $25 off your first Airbnb stay. Ready? Let's get Jasper on the line. Hey, Jasper, welcome to the Side Hustle Show.
Hey, what's up, Nick?
Thank you so much for joining me. Jasper, everyone, is a digital nomad, if you will, who funds his lifestyle by renting out his Amsterdam apartment through Airbnb, a venture that has turned into a $60,000 a year business. This is pretty serious stuff. He's the author of Get Paid for Your Pad, or co-author of Get Paid for Your Pad, the best-selling book on Airbnb hosting. Jasper, let's get into this stuff. If I want to list my place, how do I get started on this stuff?
It's very easy to get started on Airbnb. You can probably create a listing within half an hour, and it's free. But to do a really good job at it, you will need to invest a little bit more time.
Okay. What would that entail?
Well, I can talk about that for about 5 hours.
do you find, like, for me, the issue is like location, right? Like, so we're in the suburbs. We're probably 45 minutes east of San Francisco, and I've checked some of the Airbnb listings in our town, and it doesn't seem like they have any ratings or reviews. So it's like, is there, what if you're in an area where there's just like not a lot of demand?
Well, here's the thing. If there's not a lot of demand, then there's probably also not a lot of supply. And the way I see it, if there's a hotel in your neighborhood, then there's a market for Airbnb, right?
Okay. No, that's actually a really good point, because there are, like, every chain, like there's a Marriott, there's a Hampton Inn, so there are a bunch of hotels. Okay, no, that's a good point.
So if you have people visiting, then there's a market, and then what you need to do is you just need to make sure that your Airbnb listing will show up on top, and we'll get the reviews and get those bookings, and you get that business going to actually attract some people.
How are you, like, so the pictures I see on the site are like these beautiful images, and they almost look like professionally staged, like realtor style photos. Are you taking those yourself, or are they or does Airbnb send like a professional photographer out to do those for you? How does it work?
Well, you're actually completely right. They do send a professional photographer over.
I heard a rumor that, when they were first starting out, that they weren't getting much business because people were just taking crappy photos of their apartments, and they're like, hey, no one wants to stay in this like dingy, dark apartment, but we can clean it up. We can make it look really nice. And so that's what they started doing.
Yeah, I mean, it's one of the things that they started doing. But to be honest, I was recently in Paris, and I wanted to stay at an Airbnb place, and I was going through some listings, and most people just don't put a lot of effort in making it look nice. You know what I mean? So it's one thing having a listing, but your listing is your way to advertise, to market your apartment. So your whole business depends on it, basically. So it makes a lot of sense to try and make it look a little bit nicer than just like an iPhone picture without any lights or with the curtains closed or something like that, you know?
Yeah. What would be some best practices to you take the best pictures or kind of stage it so it looks super nice?
Well, I mean, first of all, you want to get that Airbnb photographer. Airbnb doesn't charge for that, so it's a free option.
Oh, okay.
A few things that you want to take into account. Try to schedule it for a day where the weather is going to be good, because natural light is always the best in pictures. And then make sure you open all the curtains, get as much light in as possible. You might want to turn on all the lights, turn on the TV. And then make sure it's tidy. Make sure the beds are made. Because basically, I mean, you know, think about when you book a holiday yourself and you're looking at some hotels. Let's say you see a hotel room that's like full of like random stuff, and the you know, the blanket is all like rugged up, and then, you know, would you really want to stay in that hotel room?
Yeah, it looks dirty.
Right? You don't want to stay there. So that's the way how you have to look at your own apartment as well before you take pictures. You should think, okay, if I'm taking this picture right now and I'm looking at it as a traveler, would I want to stay at this place? Yes or no?
Did you always rent your place out as the full what do they call it? Like a full rental, or was it ever like share? Like I'm staying here too. Like I still need a place to live, but I have a spare bedroom. Do you find there's a difference between those kind of listings?
Well, the main difference is that when you're renting out a room, that means that you're going to be sharing your house with the guest. So that means that you have a lot more opportunity to build a relationship with your guests, and you have a lot more options to you know, make the relationship either quite personal or more distant, also depending on what the guest wants. So really getting a feel for whether a guest wants to hang out all the time or he just kind of wants his privacy is a very important skill to have when you're renting out a room. Whereas if you're renting out your full house, then, you know, you're going to check in your guests and then you're going to go somewhere else.
Yeah.
So that's the biggest difference.
And if you're in your case, you're going somewhere far away, so somebody else is managing this for you.
Absolutely, I have a nice system in place, and as a result, wherever I am, whether I have internet or not, doesn't matter. My listing is always running, and people messages always get responded to within 1 hour. So I can let me describe how that works. So first of all, I have a cleaning lady who I completely trust with my life.
Okay.
And she
you're gonna have to upgrade her title from cleaning lady.
Right. Maybe I should call her a business partner. But she manages my house, so she cleans it, and she also checks in the guests, and she makes sure that issues get resolved in case there are any. And, you know, these could be smaller things like replace a light bulb, or, you know, if the internet goes down or whatsoever, whatever the issue is. So I don't have to be in Amsterdam to do this. And obviously that would make it impossible to travel. But then the second thing I do is I use a company called Guesty, and they manage all the communication with my guests. So what I did is I provided templates of the way I communicate with my guests, so all the emails that I sent them and all the information that I sent them, and then they send it to them for me.
Okay, this is Guesty.com. It's property management for Airbnb listings.
Yeah, and it's great because they only charge 3%.
3%?
They only charge 3%.
Oh my gosh, that's really cheap.
I know, and they always respond within 1 hour. So, and response time is a very important thing on the Airbnb to get bookings, and also for your search ranking results. Okay. So it's great. And to make it even better, we actually have a special deal with them. If you use the code GPFYP, then you get the first 2 weeks for free.
GPFYP?
Get paid for your pad.
Get paid for your pad. Okay,
that's it.
All right, we'll link up all the stuff in the show notes for sure, and I'll put together, as always, a kind of a detailed PDF file with all my notes and highlights from the call that you can download on the show notes page. This is really good stuff, Jasper. Thank you so much for sharing this. So use it for first two weeks free, you said, or first 2 months.
For first 2 weeks, you get it for free. Yeah.
Okay, cool.
You only pay when you get bookings.
Right.
So if you're just starting out, you can also use it, and
While we were looking for stuff on our Spain Portugal trip, I noticed there were some that had a little lightning bolt. There was like instant book, and some that were like request to book or contact host or something. Do you use one or the other, or what's the difference between the two?
So when you use Instabook, that means that guests can book your place without any sort of interference from the host. So if the days are available on the calendar, they can immediately book it, which means that you don't get to screen for guests because a lot of hosts are a little bit selective with the guests that they want to receive. So they often want to know a little bit more about their guests. They want to kind of get an idea of what type of people they are, what they are looking to do, and Airbnb gives you that freedom. Airbnb doesn't punish you for being selective with your guests. But if you want to use the instant book function, then you can set some parameters. For example, I have a parameter installed where only people that have at least one positive review can book my place instantly.
Okay.
And it can only be done 3 days in advance or more. So these are things that you can control. These are things that you can set. But it's definitely a good thing to have the instant book feature on.
When you were starting out, like, did you have any criteria for what you were looking for in this screening process of because that is kind of weird. Like, you're opening the doors to your house, especially if you're still going to be there at the same time, and you're just renting out one of the spare bedrooms or something. Like, you want to have some safety net or some screening process to make sure this person's not a creeper or what their deal is.
Yeah, exactly. So, Airbnb has a number of ways to build some trust. You can add a number of verifications, so you can connect your Facebook, you can verify your phone number and your email, and you can also request references from friends. And those people don't have to actually stay at your house, or these can just be friends who write you a nice little note, say that you're not a serial killer, but a really nice guy. And then obviously the review system is big. When it comes to trust. If somebody has a couple of positive reviews, then you can feel pretty safe that he's not going to kill you.
How do you go about getting your first reviews? Because it's kind of like a lot of these platforms where, I'm looking at something and it has, even if it looks amazing on the pictures, but it has 0 reviews, I'm kind of like, what's the deal there? So do you have any tips for people to go about getting their first bookings, their first reviews?
Absolutely. So when you're first starting out, getting those bookings and getting those reviews is absolutely critical. So there's a few things that you can do to increase the chance that you'll get bookings quickly. The first thing is you can start out with a very attractive price. And that will do a couple things. First of all, that will boost your position in the search results. And secondly, obviously, people are more likely to book your place when it's cheap. But you should do one thing in combination with that, because if you don't mention anything in your description about the lower price, then people are going to think there must be something wrong with it.
Okay.
So what you do is on the top of your description, you make a note and you say, hey, I'm just starting out on Airbnb, and for the first month, I have a special offer where people get to stay at my house for 30%, 40%, 50%, whatever it is, less than normal. And then you make your listing look really professional, and then you'll get bookings way quicker than if you were to start out in a different way.
Okay. Yeah, it's similar to like on Elance. If you've ever hired out work there, occasionally they'll get bids back where say, I don't have any feedback yet. I don't have any reviews yet, but my normal hourly rate is 60, but I'm here at 30, just to build up a little bit of a portfolio, generate some positive reviews. Okay. So that makes sense.
Yeah, that's exactly what happens.
Do you have a rule of thumb for setting your price? Because you want to be, I imagine you want to squeeze as much profit out of your asset as you can.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And this is something that I thought about a lot when I was writing the book, because I actually have a econometrics background. and I specialized in operations research, which is basically optimizing economical problems.
Oh, good stuff. Good stuff.
So naturally, I immediately started writing down all these mathematical formulas, and I eventually came up with some pretty complicated stuff. But I figured it wasn't a good idea to really go deep into the mathematics in the book. So I came up with kind of a simplified system that works pretty well. And the way you do it is you basically look at the other listings in your area, and you start out with a price that's significantly more attractive. Like we said, that's to get the initial bookings going.
Okay.
Now, as you get your first bookings in, and pretty soon you should reach a near 100% occupancy. As you're getting near that, you can start raising your prices. And the way you do it is you raise the dates that are furthest away in the future. You raise those the most, so people get to stay cheaper when it's a short-term thing, because you have less time to fill up those dates. And then what you do is you basically experiment. You keep raising your prices until you notice that the amount of bookings and inquiries coming in decreases, and that's how you kind of figure out your optimal point.
Okay, so you can control the rate on a per night basis and on a like 2 weeks out, 4 weeks out kind of a thing.
Yeah, you basically get a calendar that goes 1 year into the future, and you can set a special rate for every single day, but you can also set rates for weeks. So you can say like, oh, this week if somebody books it for the whole week, it'll be $500, but then the next week will be $600. So you can pretty much control everything. It's very flexible the way it works.
Okay. What's the nightly rate for your place?
It depends. So here's the other important aspect of pricing. You have to vary your pricing with demand. So, for example, my apartment is in Amsterdam. Now, Amsterdam is very popular in the spring and in the summer.
Okay.
And April, May is very popular. We have King's Day at the end of April, which is the biggest national holiday, and we have all the tulips that people love so much. Okay. that are flowering around that time. So April, May, June, July, August. I'm setting it at weekdays around the €200 mark, and then for the weekends I set it around 250 to 300.
Oh my gosh, per night. That's Amsterdam's not a cheap city.
It's not a cheap city, but but if you break it down per person, I can accommodate 4 to 5 people. Okay. Easily. So, even when it's 300, that's for 5 people, €60 a night. And that's the highest it'll go, except for like New Year's. But in the winter, when demand is low, the rates go down to about 125, 150 a day.
Yeah, we were in Amsterdam in November, and we were getting like hailed on. It was much colder than anticipated for us warm-blooded Californians. But yeah. Cool city, and definitely you can see how there would be demand for a place like this out there. Do you own the place, or are you leasing it?
I own it.
Okay. Do you have issues with Airbnb hosts who are renters themselves? Yes, that can be an issue.
It depends on the landlord. Some landlords are okay with it, and some aren't. And some Airbnb hosts tell their landlords, and some don't.
Right. We talked on the show, on the Airbnb show we did last year. It was like very open about, hey, I'm going to ask for forgiveness rather than permission on that front. He's like, hey, look, they've got $1 million liability coverage if anything goes wrong, but I'm not going to go out and ask ahead of time.
Yeah, and it's interesting, because I had this guy on my podcast a while ago, and this guy lives in Buenos Aires, and he started renting out a room in his apartment, and he asked his landlord for permission because he said, you know what, I can't afford my rent anymore. So the only way that I can keep renting your apartment is to try this out, and he convinced him to allow him to do it.
Okay.
So next thing that happens is he's doing really well, and he goes up to his landlord and he says, "You know what? I might as well rent a room somewhere else and rent out your full apartment. We're making so much money with it." So his landlord agrees, and what happens is it really pays off to invest in your apartment when you're renting it out on Airbnb. It really pays off to get like a better mattress for your bed. Maybe give the apartment paint it, add some furniture or add some amenities. Basically, it pays off to maintain it well. So what this guy did, he told his landlord, like, listen, if you let me rent it out on Airbnb, I'll pay you the rent, but I'll also make sure your apartment is in perfect state, because that way I'm going to make more money on Airbnb.
Interesting. Okay, so it's like a sublease of a sublease.
Well, if you think about it, because the first thing that landlords will think when you tell them, hey, I'm going to throw your apartment on Airbnb, they'll get visions of, drunk 21-year-olds partying, destroying the place.
Right. There's risk involved for sure.
Yeah, but if you think about it, it's actually a good thing. I mean, my own apartment is a lot nicer now than it was when I lived in it. Because I treat my guests better than I treat myself, because it's my business, right?
Definitely.
I mean,
sorry, go ahead.
You don't see any, like, if you look at a hotel, a good hotel. It doesn't look like an old building that needs like paint, or it needs, they're usually well maintained, and it's for a reason, because people don't want to stay in places that look crappy.
Yeah, even the very cheap motels still have a standard of cleanliness that they've got to abide by in order to get guests. So that's kind of what you're competing against, essentially. Competing against other hotels, motels, and other Airbnb listings.
Yeah, absolutely.
You mentioned something that was really fascinating to me, and it was about Airbnb as an investment strategy. So maybe in our area, maybe I should test it out and see what the demand really is like. But if there isn't much demand, maybe there's an opportunity to buy a place in an area with higher demand. Maybe buy a place in San Francisco. God, if I had $1 million, or somewhere else. And see what the nightly rates, see what it would be to pencil out. Because you said, hey, you can earn double the income with short-term rentals than you can versus long-term rentals. You still think that's the case?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
There's just more turnover, or how does this pencil out? Because this is kind of like real estate investing 2.0 or something like that.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I make more than twice what I used to make when I was running it out long term, but it makes sense. I mean, tourists who are in your city, they're on holiday, they're just willing to pay much more a night than somebody would pay if you rent it out for a year. I mean, there's also, you got to understand, there's also more work and risk involved, of course.
Right.
And there's some skills and some knowledge involved as well. To really do well on Airbnb, you need to put in some effort, and you need to maybe invest some money into your apartment. So it only makes sense that if you do it well, that you're making more, right?
Absolutely.
Because I mean, technically, you're running a mini hotel.
Yes.
But if anyone comes up to me now and says, "Hey, I want to buy a house, and what's the best way to monetize it?" I believe that's Airbnb, or some of the other platforms can work as well. But my favorite is Airbnb. That's just the best way to monetize.
Yeah, instead of kind of the traditional, like, I'm going to sign a year-long lease and go about this stuff. If you have kind of a spot in a prime traveler location or prime tourist location, I think that might make a lot of sense. And you mentioned a couple of things there. First was like the laws. So that's a good question, especially in New York. It's a constant struggle back and forth between the hotel industry and Airbnb. Like, is this legal? Is this going to be legal long term?
It depends on the location. Some cities have no rules, and then it's legal, because if there's no rule that says you can't, then as far as I'm concerned, you can.
Sure.
And then some cities have come up with certain rules. For example, in Amsterdam, it's legal, but there's some restrictions. Like, they have a certain number of permits for people who can do it full time. But they also have a rule where they say, oh, you can do it up to a maximum of like 2 or 3 months. And the idea here is that you're living in the place, but you're only renting it out when you're away for business or for travel. San Francisco just came out with some rules where they legalized it. I'm not exactly familiar with what the rules are like exactly, but it's something similar to the rules in Amsterdam. There's some conditions, but you're definitely allowed to do it. And then in a lot of places, the authorities haven't really come up with any rules yet. So as far as I'm concerned, I don't really think that a lot of people got in trouble. Other than in New York, what happened was that some people started listing like 20, 30 apartments. They really started leveraging up on this business model, and I think that's what they banned. I think you can still rent out your apartment in New York.
You can be a solo operator, but they want to kind of crack down on the Airbnb moguls.
Exactly, yeah. They don't want it to turn into like, huge multinational companies, I guess.
Yeah, pretty soon it'll be Hilton. They just have spread apart, a bunch of different units all over the place.
Yeah, I mean, it makes sense from a financial perspective, and it just shows how much more return you can make. And the other thing I wanted to mention, we're talking about return, but think about the other advantages that you get when you rent out on Airbnb versus long term. First of all, the big problem I had with long term rentals in Amsterdam is that I never had a guarantee that the renter would actually leave, because there's rules that protect the renter. So if you're renting out to somebody and the person's been staying there for a year and he doesn't want to leave, then good luck getting him out, at least in my country. I don't know exactly how it works in the US.
Yeah, I'm sure that depends on the city as well, like certain tenant protection laws and stuff. So if you want to move back into your place, if you want to sell it, if you want to do something else with it, you're kind of stuck because, hey, this guy's in there.
Exactly, and that could be your problem. Let's say you want to sell your house and you can't because the guy doesn't want to go.
Yeah,
that can lead to some nasty situations. And then the other thing I want to mention is what bothered me as well when I was renting out long term was that I could never stay at my own place.
Right.
Whereas now with Airbnb, when I'm in Amsterdam, I just block the calendar and then I can enjoy my own bed when I'm at home.
Right. Are there any other marketplaces, any other Airbnb competitors that you bother listing with, or do you focus just on that one platform?
When I started out, I listed on a few different platforms, and Windu was one of them, which is a very similar, it's kind of an Airbnb clone. But you know what? The one thing that I figured out is that it's better to be a king in a small pond than to be a citizen in a large pond, so to speak.
Okay.
Because the way these platforms work, it's all about reputation. It's all about how many bookings, how many reviews. And if you spread your reputation over 2 different platforms, then you're not going to be one of the major players on either one of them. And this also has to do with the way that the Airbnb search algorithm works. You can kind of compare it to Google. Everybody who's ever had a website probably knows that if you're not on the first page in Google, then people aren't going to find you, right?
Right.
So, and it's kind of the same with Airbnb. So, for example, in my neighborhood, there are, probably like a couple hundred listings. Now, it doesn't really matter if I'm on, the second or the third page, but really boosts my business when I'm on the first page. So I'd rather be on the first page of Airbnb than be on page number 3 or 4 and on 5 different platforms.
Right. So aside from the reviews and stuff, how are you, I don't know, this is probably like the subject of the entire book, but like how to optimize that listing to try and, improve your ranking?
Yeah, so there's a lot of things involved here. Airbnb has a number of factors that they use in calculating this, just like Google.
Right.
Google has like 300 different factors or whatever it is, and they tend to change them quite often as well. So it's a little hard to keep track, but They mentioned some of them in their on their website, and some of them are just kind of like they're logical. It makes sense that they use them. But the way you want to think about it is this: like, how does Airbnb want you to behave as a host? Well, for example, they want you to regularly update your calendar. They want you to respond fast to inquiries. They don't want you to cancel bookings after they have been made. They want you to basically just be the best host that you can be, if that makes sense.
Okay. Yeah.
And some major. It's basically kind of based on the activity that you show on the platform. If you get a lot of bookings, you get a lot of reviews, you respond quickly, you update your stuff regularly. If you show that you're being an active host who takes their role as the responsibilities and role as a host serious, that's how you climb the ladder.
Okay. Now that
makes sense.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. The other question I had, I just wanted to circle back to your cleaning lady / business partner. What's, you obviously have to pay her for her services. How much does she cost?
Mm-hmm. So the way I set it up is I pay her pretty well. I pay her 60 euros per cleaning.
Okay.
Which comes down to about $85.
Yeah, that's pretty good.
And I mean, I think normally it'll take her like 2 hours, hour and a half, 2 hours to clean the apartment.
Okay.
So and the check-in will probably take half an hour. So it's a pretty good pay. And the reason why I pay her well, and the reason why I also advise other hosts to pay their check-in managers and cleaning ladies or whatever you call them, you want to pay them well because they're a very important part of your business. Like my cleaning lady, she checks in the guests, so she's the first person that my guests will see, and my guests kind of depend on her whenever something goes wrong.
Okay.
So if they have an issue, if they lock themselves out, then I call my cleaning lady and I ask her to go to my place and let them in.
Yeah.
Right. So it's a win-win situation. I pay her well, but in return, I know that whenever something goes wrong, she's always going to be there.
Okay. Yeah, that makes sense, and that kind of frees up your time to go do other things, to travel and write books and all this other stuff.
Exactly, and the time zones are also a bit of a challenge sometimes, because if I'm in Australia and it's like 12-hour time difference, and my guests have a problem in the middle of the day, then I'm going to be asleep.
Yeah.
So, do
you add the cleaning fee to the booking fee, or do you just kind of you say, hey, this is just part of the cost of doing business?
No, I add. I have 50 euros cleaning costs.
Okay.
At the booking, yeah.
Cool. So it makes sense to rent for longer term than just one night, because that adds up percentage-wise quite a bit.
Yeah, exactly. If you include it in the nightly rate, then the short-term bookings are going to be a little bit expensive.
Yeah.
The 2-night bookings.
Right. Awesome. Jasper, thank you. So this was really, really fascinating, and hopefully people got some value out of it. I know I did. I got the gears spinning a little bit. Everybody check him out at getpaidforyourpad.com, and we'll wrap up with your number one tip for Side Hustle Nation, which doesn't have to be hosting related if you don't want it to be.
Sure. So one thing that I learned from, I think it was from Anthony Robbins, is it has to do with beliefs and assumptions. He's saying that whenever you make an assumption, since you don't know the outcome, since you don't know the actual reality, you might as well make an empowering assumption versus a disempowering assumption.
Okay.
And that really struck me, because it basically, a lot of people don't act because they make negative assumptions. And I hear this all the time from potential Airbnb hosts, where they want to start a listing, but then they make a negative assumption. They say, but what if my guests will destroy my couch? What if they will burn down my house? So that's really one of the most important things that I learned, to always make an assumption that will empower you to do something versus disempower you to not do something.
Right. No, I like that. If you're going to make assumptions, might as well make empowering assumptions. We tend to dwell on the negatives and the fear of a lot of things. But hey, there's a positive side too, and maybe there's some protections in place, and you can be smart about it to deal with the negatives. But no, I like that one. No one else has said that one yet. So through 70 something episodes, so that's a good one.
Great.
Awesome. Thanks so much, and we'll talk to you soon.
All right. Thanks for having me, Nick. Bye-bye.
Bye. This edition of the Side Hustle Show is brought to you by Airbnb. Now, we talked a lot about being an Airbnb host, but as a Side Hustle Show listener, you can get $25 off your first booking when you create an account through sidehustlenation.com/Airbnb. Like I mentioned, I'm recording this from the dining room table of our Airbnb apartment here in Madrid. And, we've got more space, more amenities, a better rate, and what I would like to consider a more authentic local experience than we get at a hotel. So this travel credit is valid for up to 3 years, and after you claim it. So jump on it now. You can use it on your next trip, wherever and whenever that might be. Again, that's sidehustlenation.com/Airbnb for $25 off your first booking. Now, when it comes to running an Airbnb business, Jasper really knows his stuff. So if you're at all interested in this side hustle, I encourage you to check out his super detailed book on the subject. It's called Get Paid for Your Pad, and you can find it at getpaidforyourpad.com and at Amazon. It really is the definitive guide on the subject. And just to see what I mean, you can go ahead and get the first 3 chapters free at getpaidforyourpad.com. The whole thing is like 200 plus pages, so I know we really just only scratched the surface of it. But beyond that, be sure to grab the free downloadable PDF with all the notes, highlights, resources, and tips from this call at sidehustlenation.com/80 or through the link in the episode description of your podcast player app. Thank you so much for listening. Until next time, go out there and make something happen, and I'll see you next week in episode 81. Hustle on.
Thanks for listening to The Side Hustle Show at www.sidehustlenation.com.